Chinua Achebe's groundbreaking essay, An Image of Africa, Racism in Conrad's Heart of Darkness, was first presented as a lecture at the University of Massachusetts in 1975. In this bold and controversial critique, Achebe argues that Joseph Conrad's celebrated novella Heart of Darkness is not just a literary masterpiece but also a deeply racist text that dehumanizes Africans and perpetuates harmful stereotypes about Africa. Achebe challenges the long-standing Western praise for Heart of Darkness and calls on readers and scholars to confront the racism embedded in the language, imagery, and perspective of the novel. His essay sparked intense debate in literary circles and remains one of the most influential post-colonial critiques of European literature. Achebe opens by acknowledging that Joseph Conrad is widely regarded as a great writer and Heart of Darkness as a powerful anti-imperialist work. However, he argues that such a claim often comes at the expense of honest engagement with the text's portrayal of Africa and Africans. Achebe finds it troubling that a book which depicts Africa as a place of darkness, savagery, and chaos continues to be praised without acknowledging its racism. He sees this as part of a broader pattern in Western literature and culture. Africa is used as a metaphorical backdrop for European concerns, while Africans themselves are silenced, objectified, or erased. Africa as the other in European imagination. One of Achebe's central arguments is that Heart of Darkness reflects and reinforces a long tradition in European literature of depicting Africa as the other. In this tradition, Africa is not a real place with real people and cultures, but a symbol of the primitive, the irrational, and the uncivilized, a mirror against which Europe defines itself as rational, enlightened, and superior. Achebe shows how Conrad draws on this tradition by portraying Africa as a mysterious, savage, and inhuman space. The novel's famous setting, the dark, impenetrable Congo, is described with fear and awe, not as a place inhabited by people, but as an alien and almost supernatural world. The Africans in the novel are not given individuality, personality, or agency. They are described in vague, dehumanizing terms, grunting, howling, and crawling like animals. This reduction of African characters to subhuman figures, Achebe argues, is a clear sign of Conrad's racism. Achebe pays close attention to Conrad's language and the way it strips Africans of their humanity. In Heart of Darkness, Africans rarely speak, and when they do, their speech is either unintelligible or treated as irrelevant. They are often described with animalistic imagery, referred to as creatures, shadows, or savages. One particularly disturbing example Achebe cites is when the narrator, Marlowe, describes an African man being beaten and says it seemed as natural as a dog in a parody of breeches. This comparison, Achebe argues, shows how little Conrad regards African people as human beings. Achebe contends that this language is not accidental or simply a product of the times. Rather, it reflects a deep and deliberate failure of empathy, a refusal to see Africans as full members of humanity. Achebe also critiques the structure of Conrad's narrative, particularly the use of Marlowe as a frame narrator. Marlowe's storytelling distances the reader from the actual events and reinforces the Eurocentric view of Africa. The African characters exist only in relation to Marlowe's journey and experience. They are background figures, not subjects of their own stories. Achebe notes that this narrative technique allows Conrad to explore the psychological and moral dilemmas of European characters while ignoring the real suffering of Africans under imperialism. The horror of colonialism is portrayed as something that affects the soul of the white man, not the lives of the colonized people. While some defenders of Heart of Darkness argue that Conrad was criticizing imperialism, Achebe believes this defense is insufficient. He acknowledges that Conrad was horrified by the cruelty and hypocrisy of European colonialism, but insists that his critique remains trapped within a racist framework. According to Achebe, Conrad may have condemned the greed and brutality of the Belgian presence in the Congo, but he did not challenge the deeper assumption of African inferiority. Instead, he perpetuated it by portraying Africa as a primitive void and Africans as speechless savages. Achebe emphasizes that it is not enough for a writer to oppose imperialism in general. They must also affirm the humanity of the colonized. In this regard, Conrad fails. His sympathy does not extend to Africans themselves, only to the psychological toll colonialism takes on Europeans. Achebe concludes his essay by calling for a more honest and critical approach to literature. He urges readers and teachers not to excuse or overlook racism in classic texts simply because those texts are considered great. Literary greatness, he argues, should not be used as a shield against ethical scrutiny. He also calls on African writers and scholars to challenge Eurocentric narratives and to create literature that reflects African perspectives, cultures, and voices. For Achebe, storytelling is not just an artistic act, it is a political and moral one. Legacy and controversy. An image of Africa provoked intense debate. Some critics accused Achebe of being unfair to Conrad or of applying modern standards to a 19th-century author. Others praised the essay for its courage and clarity in confronting racism in the literary canon. Regardless of where one stands, there is no denying the impact of Achebe's argument. The essay forced readers to reconsider Heart of Darkness and to think more carefully about how literature shapes our understanding of race, history, and humanity. Achebe's critique helped lay the foundation for post-colonial literary studies, inspiring scholars to re-examine how non-Western peoples are represented in Western literature. Conclusion. In An Image of Africa, Racism in Conrad's Heart of Darkness, Chinua Achebe delivers a powerful indictment of a revered literary work. He argues that Joseph Conrad, despite his reputation as an anti-imperialist, portrays Africa and Africans in deeply racist and dehumanizing ways. Conrad's language, imagery, and narrative structure all contribute to a vision of Africa as the other, a dark, uncivilized land that serves only to illuminate European self-discovery.